Sunny 16 presents.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lighting Lounge. This is going to be show number 10, and after a long absence, I am joined again by Aid. Welcome back.
Hey, is this really show number 10? That's awesome.
It is show number 10. I think it was show number 6 when you left or something like that.
Well, I did go away. Yes, I had a lot of wonderful travels around Canada, but that seems like I've been back for a while now. But this has been our first chance to get together, isn't it?
Yeah. And did you see all of Canada?
I don't think anybody can see all of Canada in one lifetime. It is an enormous place. We did see quite a lot of it. Calgary, the Rockies, Vancouver, Victoria, Ottawa, Toronto, Niagara, and we went to Alaska for a week as well. So,
Wow.
we saw whales, and we went husky sledding, and we went to a rodeo and wore cowboy hats, and a million other things as well. So it was pretty awesome.
That sounds pretty action-packed.
It was, things like, the occasional bear, although we didn't get much bear action as such. It was more bear, you stay away from bears is the survival thing. We went whitewater rafting, which we mostly survived, apart from my son, who ended up with 5 stitches in his hand.
Oh.
But yeah, he's all right now. He's fine. But yeah, no, it's been an amazing thing. Yeah, so amazing trip. So yes. A great summer trip. It's the one, like I said, probably said this before. It's the one you talk about for 10 years, and then eventually go, yeah, we're going to have to do this. Otherwise, we've been talking about it for many years. So that's the kind of trip, the scale of trip that I've just enjoyed. So yeah, fantastic.
It's always fun when I talk to people here in Germany about America and California, and they go, yeah, well, how did you go to other states, or how does this? And I'm like, well, America's kind of big when you compare it to Germany. Germany fits in like Oklahoma or something, the whole country, and the length of California is the whole length of Germany. So I think when you go to a big country after living in a small country, then it changes the scale. And
yeah, because there's a thing, I don't know if it's a bit of an internet meme these days. I don't know if it's a real thing in the States, but comparing things to the size of Texas, and Texas is like, Canada's about the size as like 20 Texases or something.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, Texas, that small place down south.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's funny. It's funny how the perspectives change from depending on where you are.
Absolutely. Yeah. But anyway, how was your summer? You've been busy, because actually, let's say, because you've been publishing podcasts, haven't you? So clearly you've been productive this summer.
I have been productive. Yeah, it's been an odd summer for some personal reasons, but it's been fun. I actually we were planning on taking a break when you left and then picking it up when you came back, and I had this kind of idea in the back of my head. Well, maybe it would be fun to get some guests on. And I quickly messaged you and asked, hey, would it be okay if I got a guest on while you were gone? And it turned into 4 guests. So
you did really well. You got some good guests.
I got some good guests.
Impressive.
Yeah, and Billy's been great putting the podcast out for me. So I've been coordinating with him, putting the podcast out. I've been doing the YouTube part, and it's on YouTube, by the way. So here we are.
Must remember that. Does that mean I have to turn my beer around so that the branding on the label is not visible on the YouTube? Are we going to get demonetized or something?
I think you have to monetize first in order to get demonetized. So I think we should be fine. Anyways, I think we have like 6 or 7 views on one of the videos. So clearly it's an audio format first, I think.
In 10 years, we'll be an overnight success.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, anyways, we wanted to just kind of catch up a bit. And you actually, with your travels and everything, you've been kind of taking a break from YouTube and listening to podcasts and that sort of thing. So you haven't heard the ones that I recorded, but I thought I would maybe fill you in a bit on what we did and what we talked about from memory. And it was really interesting. I had 4 different guests. The first one was Jamie Maldonado, who is a familiar name. He's from East Texas. Speaking of Texas again, I learned what is East Texas as opposed to just all of Texas.
Oh, okay.
So apparently everything to the east of Dallas is considered East Texas. So
That kind of makes sense, I
I
guess.
guess, yeah. And then we had a friend of the show, Gabe Sachs, came, and we talked about his photography in sunny California. And then we had Jake Hicks, who actually, he was the guy who kind of inspired the shot that we talked about before you left with the motion blur in combination with flash.
Yeah.
So he does a lot of that kind of long exposure combining with flash, lots of color, gelled photography, and that sort of thing. And then the last one we did was with a woman named Yvonne Hansen from Canada. And we talked about her photography, her film photography, and she also does some like fashion week photography and that sort of thing. So those were the four guests that we had. It was great conversations with each of them.
Cool. Yeah, they're on my backlog to listen to. Although, having said that, having taken the summer off, a lot of social media stuff and podcasts and stuff like that, and my backlog is now a mile long at the very least. So, but yeah, did you have fun? That's the important thing.
I had a great time. We had almost no technical difficulties, so that was always good. And yeah, sometimes it really got into a really good flow, and we had lovely chats, and it didn't really feel like a podcast at all. Sometimes it felt a bit more like an interview where I was, doing questions and that sort of thing. So it was definitely a fun learning experience, and I enjoyed the interactions with different people.
Ah, okay. No, that's and from a lighting point of view, I mean, this is the Lighting Lounge podcast. Have you come away from those conversations full of inspiration and ideas and stuff like that?
Yeah, I actually tried a few new things. Last Friday, I had a shoot in the studio, and I tried a couple of things that I wouldn't have thought to do before.
Oh, right, cool.
So that was kind of fun. I was chatting with Jake Hicks, and it's kind of a technical thing, but we were chatting about cameras and lenses. And actually, after the show, we got talking about his Pentax 6x7, which I also have.
Okay, yeah.
And it's a big camera, makes big negatives, and makes a lot of noise.
A legend of a camera, isn't it? Yes, yeah.
But it's got, I think, a 125th, not a 125th, a 25th of a second sync speed.
I can see that because if has it got a 2 curtain shutter with it? Yeah. So and that's an enormous amount of space to travel across, isn't it? I can imagine why
distance.
It would be. Yeah, and a camera that was designed in the 1960s, I think.
I think it's a bit newer, but still, it's an older camera. And I think
there is a newer version of it. There are multiple versions of it, and maybe the 70s. I don't know, but yeah, can understand. I can understand why that would be.
It's basically got to travel 7 centimeters, and so it takes a while for that to open, and you need that window of time when it's fully open to catch the flash.
Yeah.
And so I was chatting with him about it because I said, he said, yeah, well, I use the Pentax 6x7. And I said, well, are you using that with flash? And he said, yeah. Really? And we got to talking because they do make leaf shutter lenses for that camera.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Which is kind of an odd thing. I've never used one, but apparently you put the camera kind of in bulb mode, and then you fire the lens separately, something like that.
See, I mean, I could see that happening. Not perhaps the slickest of user interfaces, but I mean, I can see how technically, because you put the camera in bulb mode, right? But the shutter in the lens is still closed. Then you shouldn't be getting any light through it. So, and then you can just fire the shutter in the lens at whatever sync speed you want.
Yeah. So the apparently that's a lens that you actually have to read the manual to use the lens properly.
Ooh, wow. Okay. Gosh.
Anyways, if I ever find one, I'll maybe play with one. But so far I haven't done that. But anyways, I was talking to Jake about it. He's like, well, in the studio, you just kind of turn down the room lights and you're fine. And I just
Yeah.
wouldn't have thought to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that, 1/25th of a second, a 25th of a second, is still a reasonable shutter speed. And, you're freezing the motion with the flash, so you don't have to worry about motion blur. The flash is still a 10,000th of a second or whatever that is.
Yeah.
So he said, well, just turn down the room lights a bit, and maybe, if you want to, then close your aperture a bit more. So f4, f8 at, kind of a low ambient, and you're fine.
So how did it go?
It went fine. It worked just like he said it would. Made perfect sense. And, I tested it first on my digital camera to make sure that I wasn't getting too much kind of bleed through from the ambient light.
You got the exposure on the ambient only, did you, on the digital, so you could check that it wasn't too much coming through?
Yeah, and it was showing me kind of a very faint image on the digital. It turned out to be fine, and it was even possible to shoot at a 2.8 on the Pentax 6.7 with the ambient light. So it got down much lower than I thought it was going to be. And
you have to be pretty spot on with your focus at 2.8 on a 6x7.
On a 6x7, yeah. And I managed to get a couple in focus. This one, this was kind of fun. This is kind of going off on a tangent, but that's okay. That's what podcasts are for, isn't it?
Oh, no, hang on a minute. That's not. Yeah. It's you've had an inspiring guest on the show, and you've used what you've learned to advance your own work. This is wow.
You're phrasing it nicely. So I pulled up an image here, and this was the model that I actually hired for the evening or for a couple of hours, and the lens that I used on this particular shot is a 2.5, I think, and it's a projector lens. So it's a projector lens for a 6x6 slide projector that I modified to fit on my 6x7.
Wow.
So there's no aperture in it. It's just wide open all the time.
Oh, there's no closable blades.
Right.
So it's just 2.5.
It's just that.
And you're done. Right.
And you're
okay.
done. So it's a very shallow depth of field.
It is. I really love this picture. It's a razor thin depth of field, isn't it? I mean, her eyes and her nose are in focus, but her ears are starting to blur out.
Yeah.
So yeah, you nailed the focus, but must have been pretty hard to do. There's I don't know how much of it is the pose and the lighting and just the model, who she is and what she looks like, but there's a vulnerability about it, not in a bad way, in a good way, a sort of, it's not like vulnerable as in victim, it's vulnerable as in sort of emotionally vulnerable is what's coming to me from this this picture. I love this. I really like this.
And so this, talking about the lighting, I knew that I was going to have 2 hours with her in the studio, and I wanted to use that time well because I was paying for it, and that's a new thing for me. I usually work with non-professional models, and we just do it kind of as a fun thing for both of us, and we both use the pictures, and everybody's happy. But I got a message from a friend saying, hey, this model's coming to town. She's great. You should, if you want to book a model, highly recommended. And he was right. She's a lovely model and was very easy to work with. She's from the Ukraine originally, but is kind of traveling all over Europe. And she was great, and it was really easy to work with her. I would just say, okay, I'm looking for kind of a soft mood or a peaceful look, or here something a bit more edgy, a bit more fashiony, and she would just do that. She would go into her kind of library of looks and poses and stuff, and just give you a whole bunch of different options. And so that was really, really fun to work with a professional model, which is kind of a new thing.
Ah, okay. So and you've got a bit of Rembrandt lighting going on here.
Yeah.
Shot.
So to try and get as much done as possible in a couple of hours, I thought I want to keep the lighting simple. So I used a massive umbrella for basically the whole 2 hours.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a 130 or 150 centimeter Godox umbrella. So it's
Okay.
large.
Yeah.
And I have 3 speed lights that sit in there to try and they're up pretty high because that's a lot of surface to fill. So it's
When you say umbrella, I'm guessing by the light, it's not just a pure a shoot through umbrella. It's a bounce umbrella. Yeah.
it's a reflective umbrella, yeah. So
Yeah.
the lights are shooting backwards into a silver umbrella, and then it's reflecting from that forwards, and it's got a diffusion on the front of the umbrella. So it's
I
basically
may
a
have
softbox.
exactly the same one. I think my one that's that big it might have an octa umbrella, which is my big one, which is possibly exactly the same one that you've got then or very similar by the sound of it.
Similar. This one's not 8-sided. I think there's like 20 spokes or something, so it's a bit more
Okay.
round.
Oh, a bit, yeah, okay.
But same idea. And so I used that for this shot just on the one side. I think I put a reflector on the other side just so it wasn't quite as much shadow on, what is now the right side of her face. And, just kind of adjusted the angle a bit. And that's also lighting the background, which was just a really cheap fabric background. I think they're from Kate Backdrops. And it just gives you a little bit of texture. And
I like it, and I like how in this shot it's a very complementary color to her hair as well. So you've got and the light that reflects off the background that's wrapping around her shoulders, which takes on the color of the background. I think what you've got is I love the color in this because she's a fair skinned person. And the color is I'd probably call it like a terracotta type of color that you've got for the background. But her eyes are very blue, and the terracotta and the blue, as color contrast work really, really well together. So yeah, the whole thing feels very well composed from not just a lighting point of view, but also from a color point of view.
Oh, thank you. That was I was also interested when I scanned it. This was Kodak Gold in 120, and when I scanned it and pulled it up, I was like, oh, that looks interesting. I'm never sure what the colors are supposed to look like when you scan something. So,
nor me.
Yeah. And this was another image from the same shoot, and similar idea. Just you can see a bit more of her shirt and her outfit, but this one had really interesting lens flare that snuck in at the bottom.
Okay. I just going to ask about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's lens flare or the film had something weird happen to it, but it looks kind of on the right. You can see some kind of typical lens element kind of flaring.
It does a bit, doesn't it? Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost the way it's sort of linear across the image, almost looks like an anamorphic kind of flare. Assuming
Almost.
it's not an anamorphic lens.
No, this was with the normal 105 lens on the on the Pentax 6x7. And
that 105 is a classically known lens for that camera, I think. Is it? It's the one. It's one of the ones to have.
I asked Jake after the podcast, after we recorded, I said, so what lens are you using on the on the Pentax? And he said, well, I think if you don't use the 105, then they come and take it away from you. You're required by law to use that lens on that camera.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah. He made another comment off air, which I thought was very astute. He said, doing a podcast or doing an interview is a really interesting thing because you can write to somebody or, message or whatever and say, hey, I'm doing this podcast. Do you want to come and chat for a couple hours about photography? And most of the time they say yes. But if you were just to write to some stranger and say, "Hi, I'm a stranger on the internet. Do you want to call for a couple hours and talk?" They're going to be like, "You're a weirdo. Why would we want to do that?"
Why on earth would I want to do that? Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Yeah,
So,
the podcast makes you legit, doesn't it? That's
yeah,
the thing.
yeah, it's the legitimacy. Um,
Maybe I'll put it on my next passport when I renew my passport. Yeah, there's that
Podcaster?
occupation, podcaster. Yeah, yeah. Why does your occupation always have to be the thing that you actually earn money doing? I've never been a person who identifies myself by the job that I do.
mm,
The job that I do is yeah, I enjoy it at times. I don't enjoy it other times. Same as everybody with their work. And sometimes it's interesting, sometimes it's not. But even when it's been like the best job in the world, I've never really thought of myself as that's what I am.
mm.
I've always been it's like a person who has many interests, and yes, I work for a living too.
That's what most people do.
Yeah, actually, that's raises a question for you, because I mean, you are a craftsman and an artist, as well as a businessman. So would you, if somebody says do you identify as a jeweler? Do you identify as a businessman? Do you identify as neither of those things? As a photographer, maybe, or a podcaster?
I definitely identify as being I like the German word of goldsmith, so I like
Okay,
that.
all right. Yes, sorry,
That's,
I didn't mean to demean
no,
the
quite all right,
craft, the
quite all
profession.
right.
Sorry.
But I don't consider myself an artist. Not with the
Okay.
jewelry. And that's kind of an interesting topic of what is an artist or what is a craftsperson. I'm much more happy calling myself a craftsman than an artist. And I
Okay.
think I've thought about it quite a bit because I don't know why. The photography is an art, so I am an artist if you want to think about it that way. Jewelry is an art, so you can make artistic jewelry. I think for me, the difference between a craftsman and an artist is maybe the message. That an artist wants to convey a message of some kind in their
Okay.
art.
Yeah.
That there's a deeper meaning, or a technique or something that's new and creative. Maybe, I don't know if Van Gogh was trying to tell us something with his sunflowers or his Starry Night, or if he was just tripping and that's what he was seeing at the time. I
think
don't
he
know.
was just trying to make a few quid, wasn't he? It was his get by in the world.
Maybe, yeah. So I don't know. I find it really hard to call myself an artist because I think, you got to start cutting ears off or something to really be an artist.
I don't think it's compulsory.
So I don't know. Maybe that will change over time. But at the moment, I consider myself more of a craftsman. And,
Okay, cool.
That's
still a pretty damn cool thing to be, if you ask me.
It is a cool thing, yeah. And I was chatting with Yvonne during the podcast too, and we were talking about the joys of being self-employed and all the things that go along with that. So all the paperwork that goes along with it, and
oh yeah, yes. We've had our own business for in this household for some years now, nearly 10 years, I think now. So know all about that sort of thing.
She made a funny comment. She said that she actually got into photography while she was studying something else in college, and she thought it would be a great way to make money on the side. Quickly realized that that's not the best way to make a quick buck as a photographer.
No, indeed. But hey, I mean, if she's managed to make it her thing, then well done her.
Yeah,
it's a pretty hard thing to do, isn't it, these days? So
yeah, I think so. And she has a really interesting YouTube channel. I encourage people who are interested in that sort of thing to check it out. She does things. She does videos. She did a whole series of videos about. What was it?
Well, if she's from Canada, my personal experience of touring Canada, because I know the country like the back of my hand now, is that it must be a video series about bears
I don't think
or cowboys or something.
I don't know if there was any cowboys involved, but it was she phrased it very nicely. But it was basically about the difficulty of getting in as a photographer, and access, and the first hurdle is you have to spend money to get equipment, and then you have to spend money to get a space, and then you have to spend money to do this and do that, and even if you have a lot of money, then you have to still have credits to get into events and be seen, and then you have to have pull with gallery owners to get your work presented. And so she was kind of talking about these barriers to entry at different levels of photography, and I found it fascinating. So it's 4 videos if anybody's interested in that.
Okay.
Check it out.
Sounds really very interesting. Yeah.
She did a video on stereotypes in film photography, and why are there so many pictures of basketball hoops on film, and this sort of thing. So she's got a cool perspective on photography and social issues and things surrounded by that. She did a series about not safe for work images on Reddit, and apparently there's lots of discussion on there because there's these naked pictures, mostly of women, posted on these Reddit threads, and people are claiming that they're art and artistic, and that's why there are these naked ladies on the forums. And she was kind of trying to argue that point of well, art is great and nudity can be a part of art, but is that really what you're going for in these pictures? So anyways, it was fun. We didn't chat a whole lot about those videos on the interview, but it's something that I found interesting kind of in researching before she came on the show. And
interesting stuff.
And she does backstage photography at fashion shows. So the models are kind of done with their hair and makeup, they're in their outfits, they're ready to go out, or they've just been out on the catwalk, and she gets to kind of pull them out of line and put them in the set that she has created and say, okay, we're going to take a few pictures here, and then they go and do their walk. And so she's got 20 seconds or something with each model, and but gets to do kind of a cool editorial portraits, fashion portraits.
That's very interesting.
Behind this backstage, not behind the scenes. We made that distinction because behind the scenes is them getting their makeup done and that sort of thing,
right?
But backstage. So that was cool, and we had a fun discussion about that.
Sounds like you've had a lot of educational, entertaining, and inspiring conversations.
Yeah. Everybody has their different perspectives, and it's fun to hear about them and learn about how different people see the world through photography.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So well, what next then?
Well, what next is a good question. We set this out, or I presented this idea, I guess, of doing a kind of a mini series of reviving the lighting lounge, and I'm kind of running out of. I don't have a clear picture of how it's going to go on now. I asked you to get involved kind of as on a limited run basis, not committing to an ongoing podcast.
It's very kind of you to invite me. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been wonderful having you and chatting. But you did let me know that you do want to not continue with doing this podcast. So
I have as interesting as I find it, I have a lot of commitments, and another podcast unfortunately isn't going to fit into my schedule at the moment. So
yeah, well, there are limits to everybody's time and energy. So I definitely appreciate the time you've put in here, and it's been fun chatting.
It has very much, yeah. So,
Yeah.
so time to take a step and think about it, is it?
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I don't want to continue doing it just by myself. So I really enjoy getting guests on and chatting with them. That's really fun. I would be open to another co-host. So if there's somebody out there listening to this who said like, "Oh, I would love to join that and chat," I would definitely be interested. If people have been enjoying this and want to hear more, please let me know. And the best thing would be to send me an email. So it's jm.mendiza@gmail.com, and we'll get Billy to put that in the show notes for us. And
Thanks, Billy.
Thanks, Billy. Yeah. So if you've got ideas, if you've got questions, if you've got things you'd like me to talk about or discuss with guests or that sort of thing, let me know. If you've been enjoying the podcast and you just say, keep doing what you're doing, that would be nice to hear. If you're not enjoying the podcast and you're happy to have it end, then I guess you don't have to bother writing an email because you're probably not listening anyways. So, anyways, so the future is kind of open. This is episode 10, and this is going to kind of conclude this season of the Lighting Lounge. And
season's a good word.
Season's a good word, yeah.
There can be many seasons in life, can't there? Right. So to conclude one season is not the end of something. It's it's the opportunity to transition into a new season of something else.
Exactly. So we'll see in what shape or form this may or may not return, and it's kind of up to the listeners now to see how that goes, and also just my time and finding another co-host. So we'll see. Yeah.
Well, I suppose we should say thank you very much to everybody who has been listening, and it's been good fun to do this run with you, hopefully, are you accepting audition tapes at this point in time, or just an expressions of interest, or what?
Sure. Yes, all of the above.
All of the above.
All of the above, yeah. And it's been fun for me to learn how to do this, and video calls and recording, and I've learned how to use OBS, and
I have to say I've been impressed by your technical skills in setting this up. It works really well, and it's all good. Well done.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. I think just a few years ago this sort of thing would have been much more difficult. And
you'd have needed a whole production team to do recording of video streams over the internet to such a high quality a few years ago.
It's amazing, and I'm using all free open source stuff. OBS is free. The Video Ninja that we use is free as a kind of our calling program. It's very cool. So it's been a fun adventure for me, just in that aspect as well.
Yeah. Cool. Excellent.
All right. Any final words from you?
No. I've tried to remember to say thank you to everybody, to you, to their listeners, to Billy for putting the podcast out. I think it's been a lot of fun. Thank you. And whatever you decide to do with it, I look forward to hearing it.
All right. Well, I will say thank you as well to everybody for listening, and preemptively for all the people who are going to send me lots of emails coming up shortly. And thanks for listening, and maybe we'll see you around soon. So take care, everybody. Cool. And bye-bye.
Yeah, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.